Talofalaba, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Susana Suisuiki. Coming up.
The Australian government is motivated by very self-interested strategic concerns here.
The Nauru-Australia Treaty, is it beneficial or a corrupt arrangement? Also,
nothing was in detail. There were allegations of mismanagement, allegations of things without consultation.
vague reasons given for no confidence in Tonga's Prime Minister, and it's early days for mine exploration in Bougainville. Refugee advocates and academics are weighing in on Canberra's latest move on the Pacific geopolitical chessboard. Australia is ploughing 100 million Australian dollars over the next 5 years into Nauru, a remote 21 square kilometre atoll with a population of just over 12,000. It's also the location of offshore detention facilities, central to Canberra's Stop the Boats immigration policy. Political commentators see the Nauru-Australia Treaty, which was signed this week by Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and Nauru's President David Ariang, as a bid to limit China's influence in the region. Refugee advocates claim it's a bribe to ensure Australia can keep dumping its refugees on Nauru. Margot Staunton has more.
Political commentators believe the deal was struck after months of secretive talks with the tiny nation on the back of lucrative counter-offers from China. The treaty ensures that Australia retains a veto right over a range of pacts that Nauru could enter into with other countries. In a written statement, Anthony Albanese described the agreement as a win-win situation.
The Nauru-Australia Treaty will strengthen Nauru's long-term stability and economic resilience. This treaty is an agreement that meets the needs of both of our countries and serves Australia's and Nauru's shared interests in a peaceful, secure and prosperous region.
However, a geopolitical expert says Australia's motivations are purely selfish. Benjamin Herskovich, a research fellow at the Australian National University in Canberra, says the detention centre on Nauru has bipartisan support and is a crucial part of Australia's domestic migration policies.
The Australian government is motivated by very self-interested strategic concerns here. They are not ultimately doing it because they want to assist the people of Nauru. Canberra is doing this because it wants to keep China at bay in the Pacific and it wants to keep offshore processing in play.
The Refugee Action Coalition in Sydney agrees. Its spokesperson Ian Rintoul says Australia has effectively bribed Nauru so it can keep sending refugees there.
It's a very sordid game. It's a corrupt arrangement that the Australian government has actually bought Nauru and made it a wing of its domestic anti-refugee policies. It's small beer for an Australian government that thinks that offshore detention is critical to its domestic political policies.
He says historically foreign aid has not been used to improve life for Nauruans.
The relationship between Nauru and Australia is pretty extraordinary, and Nauru has been able to effectively extort huge amounts of foreign aid to upgrade their prison. They've built sports facilities. I suspect a large amount of it has also found its way into the pockets of various elites.
Mr Herskovich says Nauru is in a prime position to negotiate with its former coloniser.
When China comes knocking, Australia immediately gets nervous and wants to put on the table offers that will keep those Pacific countries coming back to Australia, and that provides a wide range of Pacific countries with a huge amount of leverage to extract better terms from Australia.
He says it's unclear exactly how the funds will be used in Nauru.
Our Tongan correspondent Kalafi Moala says members of Parliament made vague reasons why they wanted the Prime Minister gone. Prime Minister Huakavemeliku Siasi Sovalini resigned on Monday, just prior to a planned vote of no confidence led by MP Dr. Aisake Eke. Mr Moala told Caleb Fotheringham a power grab was the true motive behind the planned vote.
There was a vote of no confidence earlier, on this Prime Minister. And in that vote of no confidence, they had, I think, if I'm right, there were about 30 reasons or 30 points that were listed, the reason they wanted the Prime Minister, a vote of no confidence on him. Now, on this one, on the second one, there were 7, I understand, 7 points why they wanted him out. Nothing was in detail. There were allegations of mismanagement, allegations of the fact that he's done things without consultation. So there's nothing kind of outright that he had broken the law and so on. Otherwise, they would have not only have a vote of no confidence, they would have taken him to court, or at least have the ombudsman or the anti-corruption commission. We've got those bodies here in Tonga to do that. So it was a vote of no confidence that. Well, what it surprised me is that it was well supported. They had the numbers to win at the end. And so obviously there were a number of people in Parliament that were not happy with the Prime Minister's performance and wanted to replace him.
So this Member of Parliament, he brought up 7 points as to why the Prime Minister needed to step down. And you said they were quite vague. Do you feel like it was more of a personal issue or a power grab rather than legitimate reasons for a lack of competence from the Prime Minister?
It's definitely a power grab. The key thing is that publicly, I mean, no Prime Minister is without, they make mistakes and the decisions that they make that some people are not happy with. That has happened with previous governments, and this Prime Minister is, have had those decisions that people are not happy with. However, there's no Prime Minister previously that have done far more in terms of huge projects that are going on in Tonga, construction, things that has benefited Tonga. I mean, the fact that he's the chair of the Pacific Island Forum, which was hosted by Tonga, and the fact that he, because of that, have set up the fact that the resilient funding for climate change for the whole region was going to be based in Tonga. And this may change now that he's resigned and no longer is the Prime Minister. I don't know. But this was approved at the Pacific Island Forum that was held earlier in Tonga this year. Anyway, a lot of tremendous things going on in the country as a result of his leadership. Publicly, there's nothing that you would say, wow, he's gone out and there's a bunch of funds that are unaccounted for and he's used this money to do something that it was not assigned for. So it was definitely a power grab by a group of people that they felt, they want to take over, they want to be the Prime Minister, they want to do it before the next election. And of course, this plan hasn't worked. Now that he's resigned and this government goes on for another 14 days to the 24th of December, where they're going to then ballot for a new Prime Minister.
The chief executive of a company exploring for minerals in the autonomous Papua New Guinea region of Bougainville says they're a long way from knowing if they have found deposits worth recovering. Island Passage Exploration has geologists undertaking surface exploration in the Isena area of the main island of Bougainville. Chief Executive Donald McInnes spoke with Don Wiseman, who asked how big a discovery have they made.
So it's very early days, Don. We are a long ways away from being able to talk about having reserves or resources, and those are very technical terms in the minerals industry. But we have lots of indications that there could be something there. And what's exciting for a geologist and an exploration company is when Panguna was being put into production, there was a moratorium put in place over the whole rest of Bougainville to prevent any exploration anywhere. So the area outside of Panguna has not been explored really since 1972. That's 50 years of no modern exploration going on. So we've started at the very beginning, and that's going out and testing sediment, getting sediment samples from the creeks covering the project, and anywhere we're getting some interesting gold or copper, moly, lead, zinc numbers in the stream sediment samples, then we are spending time on the ground, walking up and down the creek beds, maybe doing some soil sampling in those areas to follow up. And the area area, like a lot of tropical areas, it's got incredibly dense foliage, so there's not a lot of rock outcrop. So you have to do these earlier stage surveys to see where you might find an area of interest. Now, what is interesting and a great tool for us is there is a lot of small-scale miners on the whole of Bougainville, and they're not stupid. They're very smart in finding places where there is gold. So there's at least 14 dormant or active small-scale mining operations on our project. So that gives us an indication that if the small miners are finding gold, then maybe there's something worth following up there. Things are very positive so far, but we have no idea if something might be commercial, and we're years away from knowing and understanding that at this point.
When you're exploring, how deep do you go? You're looking a fair way below the surface, presumably.
We'd like to be, so that usually entails drilling holes with a diamond drill. We're not doing that yet. We're just collecting samples at surface. The only subsurface sampling we're doing is with an auger, and we're going down maybe up to 2 meters through soil to try to get soil samples closer to bedrock. But we haven't even gotten to the point where we've got a drill target figured out yet, Don.
So it's a long, long process. How confident are you at this early stage that you could see it right through and be mining there?
Wow. Explorers are dreamers, and we always think we're on to the next best thing, no matter where you are in the world. It's just the nature of what prospecting and geology and mine discovery is all about. The general geological setting of all of Papua New Guinea, the Solomon Islands, it's in the Ring of Fire, which has a lot of geological reasons why it's amazingly prospective. And it would be surprising to me at the end of the day if there's not more than Panguna on Bougainville that will be commercially interesting. Whether that's on ELO2 or whether that's on a different part of the island, that certainly remains to be seen.
And as we know, mining on Bougainville has been a hugely problematic thing. We're still working through the legacy of the Panguna mine, and just this week, a new report out, we have Rio Tinto now saying, yes, they will help with remediation and so on as a result of that. What would be different about your approach to avoid going down that road?
So a few things. Today, the way Panguna was permitted and operated, it's doubtful that that would be permitted today. So just putting your tailings in a river, and this was done normal course of business back then. Octedi, they put all of their tailings in the river. That simply wouldn't happen today, and that's where a lot of the footprint of the former operation is, and it's very controversial. Our approach is going to be, first, the landowners we are trying to earn an interest from have a certain degree of control and a certain say in what happens on their land. So we are not going to do something that isn't done through the lens of a partnership approach, and we would take the project through a normal modern environmental assessment and see if the impact of building a new mine is acceptable to the people and our shareholders, and most importantly to the debt world, because you're never going to be able to borrow money to build a mine unless you can show that your footprint is going to be manageable and you can mitigate negative impacts. And when you look at the range of opportunities from, say, a vein gold mine like K92 has in Papua New Guinea, your footprint could be very different from an underground mine than a big open pit. So what we end up finding at the end of the day on our project, or other people may find elsewhere on the island, remains to be seen. And it's going to have to be done in a partnership with Bougainville. And they've been very clear that mining is going to be a part of their future, but they're going to be in control, as opposed to when Panguna was permitted in the late 60s. At that time, PNG was a colony still of Australia, and you had the Australian government granting a tenement to an Australian company, and Australia gave them permission to build a mine, and it was done under the standards of the late 1960s, and the Papua New Guineans, and especially the Bougainvilleans, had no say in what that looked like. Because Panguna was so rich, it gave PNG the opportunity to seek independence, and they became an independent country 2 years after operations occurred. But the Bougainvilleans felt very slighted because they were suffering all the environmental impacts from the mine, and very little of the wealth from the mine was staying on Bougainville. It was going to Port Moresby or elsewhere. So the Bougainvilleans have set up their mining act to ensure that they get their very fair share of any impact from a mine, both positive and negative.
What are you going to do with your tailings?
Well, right now we don't have a deposit that we're doing a mine design around. and the tailings.
Well, what are the ideas? If you're not going to put them into the river, I mean, you're on the side of a mountain, I understand.
Look, our property goes almost from sea level up to 2,000 meters and then back down. So we're straddling a mountain range. If we ended up with a vein gold mine, you'd have a very small footprint and a very small tailings facility. There's a modern approach to this called dry stack tailings, where you don't have I'll call it a swimming pool full of the old tails. And if you look at Batu Hijau in Indonesia, they have a pipe that goes from their mill out into the ocean, and they're doing what are called submarine tailings disposal. And there is no tailings pond. So there's a wide range of things that you can do, and anything is going to have to be done in concert with what do the customary landowners, what would they like to see happen, and can that be done in an economical way?
That's Pacific Waves for today. For all episodes, head over to rnz.co.nz/Pacific. We're also on Spotify, Apple and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, tō whā soifua.